Hello, everybody. Welcome to From the Logo. We're here tonight to talk some more about the Portland Trailblazers, your Portland Trailblazers. Tonight they are playing the Knickerbockers, and big news dropped today that today was the first day Matisse Thybulle was going to suit up and play for the Blazers, and so far he has not entered the game. What do you guys think about the Blazers over the last couple weeks and moving forward? Do you think Matisse is part of the lineup?
Kirby, go ahead. You,
I
you,
don't even know how much to say about it. I know my dad is obsessed with Matisse Thybulle and brings him up every time we go over there. When's he gonna play? When's he gonna bring the Blazers to the promised land? I don't even know if I have anything to say on him. He's maybe he'll play and create a little bit of trade value for himself this summer. That'd be nice.
I think it's funny. I don't even really know what to. Not funny that he's been hurt, but just what do you even make of it? It's one of the most random full season injuries I've ever seen in my life. I mean, just out of nowhere. At the beginning of the season, it was like, yeah, he's gonna be out a couple weeks, and now we're in March and he hasn't played. I think there's something bigger going on, maybe something that's not doesn't have to do with basketball. I don't know. Because that to me, it's not just a sprained ankle. And this is coming from somebody with historically weak ankles in me. As far as the actual Blazers as a whole go, they have been playing, all things considered, with their last, four-game losing streak, right? But they played the Celtics, the Thunder, the Pistons, the Warriors.
The
And
Cavs a few
The
weeks ago.
Cav the Cavs, a little bit before that, they beat the 76ers before that, right? Uh, they played the Cavs really close. Um, Celtics, they had Peyton Pritchard and Derek White going just historically good, right? Thunder, just a juggernaut. Pistons have been playing way better this season, which shout out to them. Uh, and then finally the Warriors, which they stole a Jimmy Butler, and it saved their season, which infuriates me because they were dead in the water without him. Um, I mean, so they've had a kind of a really tough stretch of games. I think that it kind of evened out. A lot of those were on the road as well. I think that it's going to be make it tougher to make the play in. That what people wanted. They're kind of falling a little bit right now, but they could still make a push to the play in as the schedule evens out.
Yeah, it does seem like the plan is getting a little bit more remote. We have 16 games left, and right now we're 5 games back in the win column from Dallas and Sacramento and 9 and 10. Now we're fewer games behind in the loss column, 4 and I guess 7 respectively. But yeah, it's definitely have some ground to make up, and I just don't know if we have enough games left to do it, especially, with the Blazers on a little bit of a skid. They're definitely in a tough spot. I mean, they're in a spot where they're not looking at getting a top draft pick, and they're not really going to make a serious push for the playoffs, probably. So, we were a little bit worried about this, but what are you going to do? I just hope that they keep letting the up and comers play. It has been fun to watch some of them play. I don't know why it seems like kind of a waste to try to find minutes for Matisse at this point. I guess to try to build some trade value, maybe. But yeah, I don't really see that being like a piece that's going to move us into play-in contention. And it's also probably not going to help us get a better draft pick. So we're a little bit in no man's land, but we knew that was a distinct possibility this year.
I mean, and quickly, that's kind of why they flattened the lottery odds a little bit a couple of seasons ago, and that's why the Hawks got the number one pick. So it's not the end of the world if you're a little bit higher up. I mean, you do want to maximize your chances, but we did want to see flashes from the young guys this season, and we have seen flashes that maybe the Blazers' young core, Kamara, Denny, Shaden, Scoot,
Boingen.
Donovan, yeah, those guys are maybe better than what we had thought, a couple months ago, 3, 4 months ago. So maybe they don't need as much, maybe just another season of development, maybe a starting role here or there, another season to gel, and then, maybe a coaching change, and then we'll be cooking, right? So, it might not be the end of the world. Would I love a Cooper Flag or an Ace Bailey on top of that? Yes. But I think all things considered, I still think it's been a way more positive season and fun season to catch a game in than last season. I think
Oh
we can
God, yeah.
all agree with that. This season, like when you turn the game on, you're like, oh, that was a fun game. There was multiple good stretches in almost every game the last couple months, right? I mean, there's rarely a game when you're like, oh, that was horrendous lately, right?
They're
There's
competitive.
some, but
Yeah.
like they got blown out by the Nuggets a while back. But other than that, I mean, pretty rare that that happens this season, and that says a lot. They're the youngest team in the league, basically, if I remember right. So, okay, you're on the right path. That's what we want. Just progress, and they're definitely progressing. So that's good. That's the key to all this. Progress with the young guys.
Yeah, I have to imagine that next year, if this keeps going, we're probably going to look at just about flipping the wins and losses. Most likely, I still don't see next year as being the year that we're up in the top contention, but we could easily be like a 40 win team next year, I think. Um, Maybe even a little bit better. So, yeah, I definitely see the progress, and it is fun to watch the guys play. I mean, Shaden's had some really good games, some really good flashes. I don't think we've done a podcast since the dunk heard around the world, right? When
We
he had
did.
potentially the dunk of the year. That
That
We
was
opened
night.
with it.
absolutely epic. And yeah, it's also been fun to watch Donovan start to mature a little bit. I mean, he's brand new, he's not even supposed to be as ready for the league as he's kind of starting to look. So yeah, definitely seeing the potential. And I think that, one of the big takeaways this year for me has been that I'd really like to try to make Denny part of the future for the Blazers if possible. That guy is really fun to watch. And he seems like a good fit for a lot of the other young guys.
He might be having the best standout season out of everybody, honestly.
He shoots a pretty solid percentage. I mean, his numbers often aren't like astronomical numbers, but a lot of times he's like, 5 for 7 or 5 for 8. Sometimes like 3 for 4 or 4 for 5 from three. It's like that's awesome.
With eight now too, he's been really crashing the boards. He's been getting some big rebound games.
I mean, when we first heard of the trade, right? This was the instant reaction. And we were like, Joe, what are you doing? Joe was cooking, is what he was doing. We maybe got a little bit nervous a little bit too quick. I mean, the guys
It was a pretty quick correction for us, though. I feel like it
we did.
was like,
We
what
were
the
on.
hell for like a few minutes, and then we're like, oh, looking at this guy's highlights and his stats, it's
Yeah,
maybe a decent move.
right. Uh, I mean, you look at his stats through the regular season, it might not tell the whole story because of he had a slow start shooting. But if you watch the game on the floor, man, he is just a monster out there. He's a wrecking ball, and I mean that in a good way, not in like a chaotic way.
I
So,
remember even the through the struggles, the shooting struggles earlier in the season, he still passed the eye test. We were still like, this guy's not going to shoot this bad the whole season. And if he plays like this and brings the energy and the pushing the ball and the movement and the everything that he brings to the table and can get those numbers up a little bit, he's going to look like a force. And he's up to 46, almost 47% from the field, 34%, which is just a tick under his percentages from last year. He's averaging more than he averaged last year now. And wait, listen,
Did we lose Curb?
might have lost him. We'll never know. But I wanted to say one thing while we're talking about Denny. Currently, the Blazers are playing the Knicks. They're down 7 here in the third quarter. Kirby, you blinked out on this for a second,
yeah.
but
So
16, he's got 16 and 12 in the third quarter here on 22 minutes played. 12 rebounds, that is. So Denny is kind of a monster out there. 4 of 6 shooting. So man, yeah, he's fun to watch, and I'm excited to see what else he can do going forward.
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
just kind of generally, I mean the looking at the Blazers last, 10 or 15 games, they're beating the teams they should beat and not necessarily beating the teams that are supposed to be better than them, which honestly isn't the worst thing. That means that the guys who are young, the guys who are learning, they're able to go out there and take teams that they should beat seriously enough to beat them. And they're putting up pretty good numbers. I mean, we're beating teams like our last win, 76ers, Nets, Wizards, Jazz, and Hornets. Like those are all teams that are kind of are worse than us or in our lane. And we're losing to, the Cavaliers, the Celtics, the Thunder, the Pistons, the Warriors. But that those are some teams that are playing really well or on streaks right now.
Speaking of streaks,
Yeah, let's talk about that. Almost got that win against the Cavaliers. Almost. That was actually a really
It's a
good
good
game.
game.
And the
15 in a
Cavaliers are
row,
on
though.
a tear.
15 in a row. When, I mean, have we
Isn't
been,
that like their second 10 plus game win streak this season? Didn't they have I think they played
that's
the
the start of the
Thunder
season.
earlier in the year and they had like I think they're it might have been 15 or something. I think they both had like over 10 game win streaks when they played each other and the Cavs won that game if I remember it.
Yeah, that's absurd. I mean, could you imagine the kind of shenanigans we'd be getting up to on this pod? The Blazers were on a 15-game win streak on the backs of, you know, the guys that we had built around like that. That would be a fun time. And what, I mean, how are they doing it? How are they doing it, Riley?
Well, I'll tell you this. I just checked, and they're on two 15-game win streaks and a 12-game win streak on the season. So, that's like historic numbers. I mean, they're not out of the picture for getting like a 70-win season. And I remember we talked earlier in the year, like, when do we start taking them seriously? And I think we'd be pretty foolish not to be taking them seriously right now. But I mean, they built this team with patience. There's no doubt about that, if that's what you're getting at.
They did. They
Yeah.
really did. They had to build it from the ground up. Darius Garland, right? And they had a small backcourt for a little bit of time. And they had Donovan Mitchell and they had Darius Garland. And somehow, with all the chatter, it's working because they got that young big in Evan Mobley. And they actually were able to build around it and Jared Allen. So they put size and skilled bigs around the two small guards and defense around the two small guards. Hmm.
Mobley's such a difference maker for them.
Mobley
He's
is.
he's
So
very
is Jared
good.
Allen.
Yeah, it's true. I hope
It
I,
also
I
helps.
hope Klingon can develop into something similar to that in terms of skill and effectiveness because
You know who
he
else is
looks
a
like a
total
monster.
stud and just an absolute weapon coming off the bench for them is Max Strus. That guy has built a career for himself. And he's doing exactly what he did in Miami and proving that he was a huge part of that finals run that they had the other year, a couple years ago. And he's doing the exact same thing. And he adds a totally different element to the team, I feel like, that kind of I feel like puts them really more in that championship window than if they didn't have something like that coming off the bench. And then obviously Hunter, that was a kind of a big pull of the trigger that they did to go get him, and he's really fit in well as well. He was the one who basically won that game for the Cavs against the Blazers.
Oh yeah. He had 30 points. Ty
And
Jerome.
all he made all the plays down the stretch too. Yeah, Ty Jerome too.
Yeah, they're pretty deep, honestly. You go down their list. I mean, at first, like if you didn't know, like before this season, like you're not sure, but they do have like Isaac Okoro. He was been a rotation player for them for a while. Dean Wade, he's their shooter. He gets a lot of minutes too, right? You can go down the line for them like that. Um, I mean, yeah, shout out to them. They've been building around him for a while with their two guards and their two bigs like that. So it's really worked out for them.
So who
Um,
do you like between them and the Thunder if they were to somehow get through the field and meet in the finals?
here's
Two
here's
young, up and coming teams, deep, completely inexperienced for the most part, never made a deep run. very few players on the team, like Max Strus and Alex Caruso and Tristan Thompson are like the only ones that have real championship experience. So out of those two teams, who do you think's the real threat, the real contender?
Here's my cynical take. It'll never happen. Tim Donahue has informed the world that when stuff like this would happen, they would somehow influence the game where we have to have a big market. No, I don't know. I think that it would be interesting if this matchup could occur. I think that it would be fun for the like basketball heads to watch this matchup happen. I I still think that somehow it won't happen, but I like for some reason the Thunder to me seem like maybe it's because they play in the Western Conference, so they play like more like for real teams to me. That's just how I feel. I know the Cavs are at a historic pace right now, but if you look at the bottom of the East, it's way weaker than the bottom of the West. So I feel like the Cavs might have a slightly more inflated win total just off that. And then the Thunder are lapping the field in the just the competitive West. So um, I'm gonna say the Thunder have a slight. They also have a bigger, higher point differential. So even though the the Cavs are historic, the Thunder are very good as well. And then who can forget SGA, man? The guy can snap his head back better than anybody. And even in the playoffs, I think he's gonna get those calls. So I gotta give it to the Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a good argument to be made there. I think you're right that the West is just stronger than the East generally. I mean, it looks like it looking at the teams. It feels like it's the Cavs, the Celtics, and everyone else in the East. I don't know if that's too much to say, but I just don't really see the Knicks as necessarily being a real competitor. And the Bucks certainly not. So, and then in the West, I think there's more depth, and OKC has shown that they can play with those guys. I feel Denver coming on a little bit, so I don't know that matchup's going to happen. If it does, though, I think SGA is just going to be the best player on the floor if it comes down to those two teams, and I think he's going to get it done.
I feel like Jokic should be the best player on the floor, but the problem with the Nuggets is it feels like they have to score 140 points to win a game lately. I don't know what's going on with their defense, but looking at their box scores, every team just goes the fuck off against them. And I don't know, Murray doesn't seem like he's quite the lethal threat that he was a few years ago. Maybe he'll get it going during the playoffs. But the Thunder did beat the Celtics in Boston tonight, 118-112. So another adding to their resume for, being a legit contender this year. I don't outside of them, those three teams really, the Thunder, the Cavs, and the Celtics, I don't know if I see really any. I just don't know about the Lakers or the Warriors or the Nuggets, and I don't really see anybody else in the East being a contender either. So it's kind of
You
those
don't
three
think
teams versus the field for
you don't
me.
think Ja Morant has a shot?
He
I
always, my problem with him is he always gets hurt at the wrong time. I mean, if he's healthy and they have their full complement of guys, they could make a run potentially, but I don't really have faith in their health. And also, I think that there's a couple teams that are better than them, even if they were fully healthy.
They're the most slept on team, in my opinion, the Grizzlies. I have not heard them talked about one time, and you look up and they're third in the West, tied in the win column with the Nuggets, and you just don't hear them mentioned a peep about them. Honestly, like you just don't hear them. Jaren Jackson is a menace. Um,
Is
they're
he
a
hurt?
threat.
Did he get hurt recently? Or no, am I tripping?
Mm,
it is
He
interesting.
is out, but
he's
I don't
out.
Like
know.
I don't know
Tank.
about I don't really think that I see the Warriors as being a team that is going to keep this up. They're on a really good streak coming out of the trade deadline. Steph looks amazing right now. Looks like, he's going through one of his flashes where he looks like he's one of the best players of all time for sure. Um, but I just don't know if Jimmy's going to keep it up. I don't know if he's going to stay healthy. I don't know if he's going to look like Jimmy from a couple years ago in the playoffs. And I don't know if they've had enough time to figure out how to play together well enough to make a serious run. And I feel almost exactly the same about the Lakers, where I just don't know if those two guys are going to stay healthy and have had the time to figure out how to play together well enough once we get into the playoffs. Although both of those teams have been pretty damn impressive since the trade deadline. They made the moves they needed to make. I wouldn't want
What
to
do you
play
think
in the
about the
first
Warriors,
round.
Colton? You think the Warriors are an actual contender?
Do you want a cranky Colton rant about the Warriors, or do you want an opinion about the Warriors? Because it's actually the
Obviously,
same thing. Uh,
obviously, cranky Colton.
honestly, I don't care about the Warriors. I don't think about the Warriors. I don't want to think, I don't want to see them on my screen. I don't want to have a matchup with them in the playoffs. I hope they fall in the play-in. I hope they lose 2 games in the play-in. I think that they're going to rely heavily. They're going to go as far as their two engines go. So if it takes extra energy from them on this 12-1 stretch, um, to get like in a comfortable spot to make the playoffs, like if Steph turns an ankle because he's having to turn it up, right, and be the best player in the world right now, and then or one of them, then they're going to be in trouble. So if one of those two guys is at all dinged up, obviously they're done. Because we saw how that looked. Steph by himself on the Warriors was terrible this season before Jimmy got there. But since Jimmy got there, even Draymond, even Backpack himself has hit clutch shots, So I think that they are going to be a threat. I don't see them being a contender. I know they're 12-1 since getting Jimmy. I was really looking and it looked like they had a weak schedule that kind of coincided with this. They were playing like the Nets and teams like that along the way. I'm not saying that they can't
If the
win.
playoffs if the playoffs started today, the Warriors would go on the road to Memphis, your most slept on team. Who do you think's winning that series? Those two teams have played each other a few times in the playoffs. They kind of have a little bit of a budding rivalry.
I'm
Who's
taking the number one shooter. And who do you think I'm talking about?
Number one shooter all time.
I got that thing on me, Ja Morant. Is who I'm taking
So
in this
number one shooter on Instagram is what you're talking about, not
match.
number one shooter all time.
I feel like that's a bad matchup for the Grizzlies,
It's
to
a
be honest
terrible
with you.
matchup for the Grizzlies.
Yeah,
They already they don't like those matchups with the
I'm
Warriors.
afraid they'd get run out of the gym, is what I'm afraid would happen.
Yeah,
I
they
just
would.
think the Warriors would play so up tempo. I mean, you just neutralize all their size, all their toughness. I feel like the Warriors have gotten pretty adept at just running around toughness like it's standing still.
Yeah.
another pretty interesting first round matchup if the playoffs started today. Rockets and Lakers. Again, kind of youth versus experience. That one, I think it's still LeBron's league, honestly. If he's healthy, he could take over that series and win it, I think. But
Well,
if
Luka's also taken over series,
yeah,
multiple, plural.
but I still feel like if LeBron's dinged up, the Rockets have a chance if he's healthy. Uh, that's I think the Lakers could win that one too. Things really do kind of slow down in the playoffs and allow those old veteran teams to make runs. But the thing is, usually they get kind of worn down as the playoffs roll along. It's hard a lot of times for those teams to sustain a high level of play. If any kind of injury happens, like you said, if any of those four guys, Luca, LeBron, Jimmy, or Steph go down, their team is immediately done. So those Grizzlies and the Rockets, they have a lot more depth. I feel like they can survive a lot more injuries and just attrition. But again, if one of their studs goes down, then they're done too. If John Morant or Green or Şengün or one of those guys goes down, then they're done as well. So it's all a health game like usual.
Yeah, like usual. I mean, we surely everybody who watches basketball is having these same conversations of just like whether we hate him or not, what LeBron's doing is just insane this year. I mean, he looks like often the best player on the floor. And, despite his age, he's just continuing to be very, very impressive. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was like up in his rebound numbers too. He was like averaging a double double there for a little bit, but he tweaked his groin. Is that what it was? And I think he's been out for the last couple games. I just saw a headline that he went back to LA to receive treatment. So that's always something to watch out for a 40-year-old dude, but he's got the resume of being able to handle injuries like that and get over them pretty quickly.
He's
Went
not
back
a normal 14-year-old dude.
went back to LA to get his groin worked on and to scream at Stephen A. Smith some more.
Get his groin worked on. It's classic.
He's not a normal 14-year-old dude.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
But I would be remiss if I didn't really quick point out the fact that the Mavericks are historically about 7 healthy players, and yet they're still better than the Phoenix Suns. Just
Oh, we lost Colton.
Oh my God.
That's okay. We can talk about how bad the Suns are for a minute before we wrap this thing up. I mean, yeah, it is. It's amazing.
Two games ahead of the Blazers right now.
Yeah, I know, and I know, and that would bring me some peace if we can just at least pass the Phoenix Suns
Be awesome.
because
It's
they,
crazy watching Durant. Like, I don't know. I don't really know what else he's supposed to do. I feel like he's done and said all the right things. It really isn't on him. It's just such a bad mix of players, of talent. It's really it's not worked out. I think everyone knows he's probably going to be gone this summer, which is probably the best for both parties.
he is out of there. I've watched so many like ESPN daytime talk shows with players where they analyze a Durant interview and it's like, what's your takeaway? He is out of there. It just, you can tell from his body language. He starts talking about things in the past tense, like things we tried to do. We thought we'd be able to do this, but we couldn't. He's out of there.
And this, usually Durant, I kind of hold his feet to the fire on this stuff. He's a hired gun and he's never, never all in on his team. This one, I can't blame him at
Yeah.
all, honestly. Like, it's just not going to work. It doesn't matter how hard he tries or well he plays or what he does from a leadership standpoint. Like, this shit is just not going to work out. So he's 35 or something like that. He's got to go somewhere. He's got to go to a better situation.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean Phoenix has to take a really hard look in the mirror and figure out what they're gonna do because they probably want to stick with Booker, I guess. He's probably their franchise guy. But if that's what it is, then it's a totally different rebuild than what they've done so far. All right, I think that's it. Colton didn't make it back, but that's okay. We'll sign off for him. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye.